it's important to know what words mean, the history of words, the history. When you understand real history, it's so much harder to be tricked. That's why history has to be so manipulated. That's why public schools are so dominated by nonsense, because that's the only way to make people think that we like went to the moon. People are like, Big Bear, I'm now listening that we might not have gone to the moon, but can you like prove it better? I'm like, buddy, every single factor says we didn't go to the moon. Every single one. Talk about trying to prove a conspiracy. Proving that we went to the moon would be hilarious to see someone try and do that. Like, if you look at, I'm not going to go into the moon stuff. I know it drives people insane because you cannot question every single factor. We no longer can go to the moon. They erased all of the data that could have proved that we went to the moon for literally no reason. None of the experts, none of the astronauts. Oh, this is the funniest one. I'll just share this one and then I'll stop talking about the moon. So one of the funniest things ever. Oh, and there's this one guy on YouTube. I can't remember his name, but he was just going through the lunar module and he was doing a funny like Italian kind of accent. And he's like, look at here. They ran out of tape and then they went here and like, okay, perfect example. The rocket, that giant rocket to get them onto the moon. Neil Armstrong was like supposedly a foot away from it as he was like, 5, 4, Eagle, we have landed, right? What would that be? 150 decibels? A rocket engine, and that little modular looks like just a construction paper thing from some kid that just got dosed with Adderall. He was 1 foot, supposedly, from a giant rocket. And he was like, the Eagle has landed. He would have been like, the Eagle! Like, there's no. Okay, so stand 1 foot from a rocket and try and talk on a radio transmission. It's okay. Here's another one. So the thing about the moon, which is why it's so powerful, but also so absurd, is it lets people fill in their fantasies with everything, just their dreams and their fantasies, right? It's pretty interesting how it almost reveals the nature of the astronaut or the expert, whether or not they could see stars or not. Like this dude, Pet, I can't remember his last name. I know way too much about this shit now. But I do I study this shit for hours every day. Because I'm just so fascinated how they pulled it off and how so many smart people that I know can't see that it's the dumbest thing you've ever. It's like, it's this stupid, right? Like this is my thumb. Oh, the thumb. Like I swear to God, guys, there's almost more evidence that I just cut my thumb in half. It's fascinating wizardry. And as someone who's always trying to figure out how things work so that I don't get tricked, it's so interesting, this whole moon thing. So anyway, so the same guy that said we destroyed all the technology and can't go back and it's too painful to rebuild. By the way, some people say, oh, well, that guy's an idiot. He's clearly got problems. He's an astronaut who's been to the International Space Station 3 times. He's like one of their leading guys. So either NASA hires idiots or you got to listen to one of the heads of NASA, an astronaut who's been to the space station. Like, is he brain trauma stupid? So anyway, they asked him if he could see the stars when he's in space. And he's like, I can see everything. He's such an optimistic, almost childlike guy. He's like, I can see galaxies and Venus and everything. And then other astronauts from other Apollo missions, they say that on the surface of the moon, you can see all the stars because there's nothing blocking it. Atmosphere is why we can't see the stars. Because if we didn't have an atmosphere, even with the sun in the sky, the atmosphere is what makes it this big, almost glow, right? And Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, Collins, a bunch of them said that you can't see any stars, right? So this one legend did a whole montage of astronauts contradicting themselves. Okay, guys, it can't be more opposite. It can't. That's the least vague thing you can imagine. Like, can you see stars from the moon, or can you not see stars from the moon? That's something that everyone would always remember. That's like, so if someone's like, oh, maybe it was because of, the helmet or guys, can you see stars from the moon or not? Well, depends on the landing, guys. All right. So Neil Armstrong said at all times, it was the darkest black you've ever seen. That you couldn't, that at all times, the whole journey and on the moon, it was the darkest black you can possibly imagine. That not only could you not see stars, it was just a vast black, right? You see how this is almost like a Rorschach test, like people reveal how they see the world? Meanwhile, you have other astronauts being like, it's so bright on the moon. And, because in the US, air pollution or light pollution, like even just having lights around your house, like, it'll drown out the ability to see the moon. But then you go to like Wyoming and stuff, and it just, even with our insanely huge atmosphere, even with like a bright moon in the sky, of course you can see the stars. Just, okay. So a lot of these astronauts are like, it's like the most beautiful thing you've ever seen is the stars when you're on the moon. They're like, it's like nothing you've ever seen. It's just, you can see them, you can see galaxies and nebula and, and they're like, because there's nothing drowning it out. And then other people are like, it's just black. Okay, those are people that didn't agree on a story ahead of time, which is, that's the arrogance of liars and evil. It's pretty funny. To the point where, same with Neil deGrasse Tyson. I can't remember if he said you could see stars on the moon. He said it would be brilliant, like it'd be like nothing you've ever seen. He said that in the Joe Rogan podcast, where Rogan played the role of a conspiracy theorist, like as if he's an actor, asking all the questions that can be put down by people, and then he didn't have any follow-up insights or questions. Like, Neil deGrasse Tyson was saying that, like, how could you have 20,000 people keep a secret and blah, blah. Rogan at that point didn't bring up the concept of compartmentalizing and how many times it's happened in history and how many times it's currently happening. That's literally how institutions operate. That's literally how it all works. Like, how could you all keep this secret? Like, think about how many people total it takes to keep a secret with like the pedophilia in the Catholic Church, and how few whistleblowers it is, because it's about power, authority, and you don't need that many people in on it. So now, if you believe that we went to the moon, you have to I know you'll be able to justify it with yourself, because at this point, it's so over the top that they had technology they can no longer make. There's no interest in us going to the moon. It's just a dusty old rock. I'll hear people say it's a dusty old rock in the same conversation that it was the greatest achievement in the history of man. Okay, so it's either the greatest achievement in the history of man, or there's absolutely no reason at all to go there because it's dumb and boring and just gay. Okay, the cognitive dissonance is so powerful that I think it gives people depression if they don't like really. Amy's known me for 7 years. She's seen my ups, my downs, my bigs, my smalls, my goods, my bads. She's like, you've never been happier. She tells me that these days. She's like, you've never been happier. I'm so happy. We have like such a good life, good family. There's been times when I've been a mess. So when people think that like this way of thinking and this way of analysis, this self-honesty, this fearlessness in any way is depressing or hurts you, they're lying to you. Do you know how much more depressing and anxiety creating it would be to live in a world where nothing makes sense? Like nothing, and you have no ability of even questioning it because you believe that the label conspiracy theorist is somehow negative. Okay, 3 guys get together and they plan out that they're going to be really nice to you, and you're going to invite them to dinner. And when you go piss, because they're going to bring 5 bottles of wine, so you're definitely going to have to piss, they're going to steal a bunch of shit and bail and kick you in the dick. If you find evidence that this is coming, and you say, hey, wait a minute, I just heard you guys talking about how you're going to steal my stuff when I was pissing. And they'd be like, do you understand that that's what this is? They'd be like, well, you're a conspiracy theorist. How dare you point out our conspiracy? Look at how taxes are collected, how wars are started, wars are fought. Everything in our life is run by conspiracies. A small group of people that profit through force, propaganda, intimidation. That's the whole thing. I never even finished my thought before about corporations, right? So the trees, they warp and shit around unmovable objects. It's the same with corporations. When you think, why is Jeff Bezos a leftist? Bill Gates leftist? Nike run by leftists. Everything's appealing to leftism. Doritos, Mountain Dew, all of it, guys, all of it. Why? Because all their money is coming from fucking poor people who get free money. Think about who spends $300 on Nike high tops. It's a lot of them are inner city black people that get free money from the government and then give it to Nike. Who buys Doritos? Poor, dumb people with free money. It's like the government steals money from people, gives it to poor people, and then they give it to companies like Doritos and Amazon and all this shit. That if they made a real free market, like a real, not free market, I understand the race to the bottom with global free market. I've become aware of that now, and it's kind of insane. But if they actually, the companies were just trying to, if the world wasn't made up of forcibly acquired money, and then given to people based on how little they work and how broken their families were, corporations would all be right wing, every one of them. The reason that the big ones become left wing is because the bigger the government, the more free money they give to retards. That's all their money. So that's why they have to appeal to these people. They have to appeal because one of the biggest Black Americans have some of the biggest disposable income of any group. Because and this isn't like my right-wing bullshit talk. I've talked to like famous Black people about this. I won't say names because I don't want people to get in trouble because they know me. But like this is very well known in the actual Black world that like the consumerism, the buying the hair from the Koreans and the most expensive shit like Mike Tyson and all these guys, like to get all that bling and that status and the Sunday suits and stuff, like they spend all their money. And so when you're a corporation, the best group to appeal to is a group of people that spends all their fucking money and they just get a never-ending supply of money given to them in the form of welfare or government subsidies. It's like such a fucking scam. And so they're not even capitalist. Like they're not capitalist. That's not capitalism. That's bullshit. So the government gives these people that are just horrible with money, statistically. Some Black people are phenomenal with money. Of course, I know I have to repeat that because some people are functionally retarded. But when you're dealing with billions, you look at the big picture. You don't care if one person's good with money. So when you have a population that literally spends more money than some of the richest demographics in America, because it's the quantity of like how much money they spend on just bullshit, like material goods that they don't need, non-necessities. A lot of rich people spend a lot of money on mortgages or, a business venture or just shit like that. These companies, what they want is people that buy fake hair and people that buy $1,000 pants because there's one name on the back, that put diamonds on their tires on their car because the profit margins are insane on that shit. Like people who buy Doritos. Read the book, The Dorito Effect. It's fascinating. Like Doritos are just a chemical factory. They have no nutrition. They just trick your brain into thinking you're eating a bunch of good shit, and it's horrible for you. And they last on shelves for years. Like the profit margin on Doritos is insane, but it requires retards to have a ton of free money. And so if that like, because when I was a kid, we had government cheese. The government gave you the cheese. And so it sucked. You know, we had that for a little bit, and I have no pride in that. No shame either. Fuck it. Government cheese. But it wasn't a private company that was profiting on it. It wasn't like now there is no government cheese. Back then you had to like fucking have the shame of government cheese. Now you get free money and you go buy like Newports and fucking, you know, Doritos and shit. And that's why these people all require a giant welfare state. And pointing it out, it's like, oh, that's a conspiracy. It's like, no, it's a fact. Of course, why would any company want a bigger state? More taxes, more random distribution of wealth made by bureaucrats in Washington that are retarded. What like efficient businessman would ever want any of that? Regulations? Who wants that? Giant companies that require retards to get free money. They need high taxes, high welfare state, and tons of regulations. Why do they want regulations? Because they don't want anyone competing with them. Who does it hurt? Let's say it costs $1,000 to get a permit to cut hair in a certain city. It's $1,000 to braid hair in the city of Detroit or something. And this shit is real. I don't know if that's a valid thing, but like it's absurd sometimes how much money it is to just do something. Who does that hurt? Does that hurt Supercuts? Or does that hurt Letitia, who wants to make some extra money to feed her kids? It hurts Letitia. So what does she do? She can't get a job, so she has to rely on welfare. So why do they like that? Because that's how the fucking whole system is just profiting. It's all going to fall down. It has to. And when people are like, oh, you're so doom and gloom, you sound so depressed, I've never been happier. I've never felt more purposeful and more hopeful for the future, because there's nothing more isolating and depressing than having no idea why anyone is doing what they're doing. Like, I'll give you an idea. I'll give you an example. This is something, like people send me this shit all the time, and I see it all the time where people are horrified at the world that's changing around them and becoming so unrecognizable for what they were raised with, and it's so bad for their children. And, you know, there's now children's books called Jacob Got a New Dress. Is that the name of this? Hang on, let me look again. Jacob's New Dress. And it's for little children to read about how Jacob, this boy, got a new sweet dress, and he's a girl. Normally, I would have pulled the Ben Shapiro and posted and been like, really? Is this really what's happening? And that gets lots of likes, and no one's, you know, I develop a big group of people. And that was, it's not like I wanted that. It's not like I was branding or anything. It was all just genuine. I'm like, okay, well, I'll speak truth to power, and I will show this shit and get other people aware, and we will fight it by awareness. That doesn't work at all. Not only doesn't it work, it's almost engaging in it in a weird way. And so when I look at like, so this, look at this. So Jacob's New Dress, that's horrifying. So think about all the people right now that just think the world is going to hell and I have no idea why. That's why I always tell guys, is like just anybody, like don't cheat on your spouse, don't cheat on your boyfriend or girlfriend. And I'll tell you why. Because what ends up in their mind can sometimes be way worse, and it's never valid, right? I used to still seek female attention when me and Amy were first dating. We even broke up over it. You know, I wasn't always the best guy. That's kind of like a scumbag way of saying like I had done some betraying things. But at the time it wasn't like, I don't know. I just thought that it was like that the more you gave women, the more power they had. And like, I'm a man and all that bullshit, right? And so she knew something was off because of my behavior, and just I was clearly, I was like fairly it wasn't the normal behavior of like someone up to no. I was literally like, yeah, like I'm a guy. Anyway, she would then start thinking it was way worse than it was, or it was way different. If I was like nice to a waitress, she'd be like, oh, did you fuck that waitress? You gonna fuck the waitress? And that's when people start just saying like women are crazy, because they'll think that you're having an affair with everybody. And the way women operate is they think it's like them. And women will like have affairs with like people's friends or their boss or people in their lives, because that's how women operate. And men, it's just 0.7 hip to waist ratio and accessibility, and it's just different, right? So in her mind, it was like everybody's a threat, and it drove her a little insane. We broke up over this early. This is all very early, but it was volatile. And so men a lot of times would just say, oh, that woman's crazy. You weren't fucking the waitress. You were just occasionally, letting chicks send you their pictures of their tits and you telling them that they were really great tits. Well, you had a girlfriend, which is definitely wrong, by the way. And but her reaction was so big because she knew that I was up to no good. That's it. But she didn't know what. And so that's when her mind would just go all over the place, and it caused her a great deal of stress. When you are absolutely true to someone, like you are just right down the middle, and you don't have to tell them everything in your life, but there's zero betrayal, zero gray area, nothing, like none. Like not even a conversation that you wouldn't be okay with your wife hearing with another woman. Like you have to get to that level, which we've now been at for a while. They're not crazy. Like they will know when something's wrong, and then they'll just create all this crazy shit. That's what's happening right now in the world. So you see something like this, and people then start thinking, they try to figure out why the hell it's happening. Is it in our water? Is it in the air? Is it the Jews, the Chinese, the Jesuits? Just pick your whatever. And they don't know. And so everything's a threat. There's no game plan. They're confused fish in muddied water, and the predator is the one who muddied the water. So when I'm doing these detailed dives, and it sounds like I'm being depressing or morbid or negative, it's not at all. I am trying to show as many people as I can the factors and the motivations and the methods at work that in the end create this book, so that moving forward, you can identify threats and you can identify game plans and you can identify stuff. And the world isn't just insane. And that's, Christianity's helped me with that as well, to understand how thousands of years ago, people knew more about what is happening right now than CNN or any of these news networks. You turn that on, that's not depicting reality. You read the Bible, you're like, oh wait, that just happened. And so stuff like that will set you, I am Christian, I'm a believer, but it's important for me to explain that even if you're not, you have to understand how accurate it is. Even if you're a diehard atheist, and a lot of times that happens because someone in an institution hurt you, someone used power, someone manipulated, someone used shame, someone was a hypocrite growing up, a priest stole from your family, or the Christian was always the one stealing. I get it. I fucking understand that whole mentality, right? Or there's no data. It's like, how can you scientifically prove God? And I'm a data person. It's like, ask scientists about the moon landing, guys. Global warming, acid rain, the food pyramid. So unless those people tell you, all that did is make new priests. What I'm trying to say is it'll help your mindset, because cortisol and stress and shit, that'll fucking take years off your life. And it's traumatic, and it's stress, and it's the trauma is how they control your mind, right? So when you read the Bible, or when you allow yourself to face the reality of like that NASA literally lied the whole time. It not only doesn't stress you out, it allows you to live a better life with less stress. And that's why I tell you guys that, because I genuinely like thought deeply about whether or not I was good for the world or not with what I'm doing. And instinctively, I think I am, because I'm like, well, I'm not lying. I'm not manipulating. I'm not out for the wrong reasons. But like, you know, my mom had a friend who died. She was always like wrapped up and angry about politics and, you know, always ranting. And she just died of like a heart failure. And so I've always thought that, like, am I giving people stress in their lives, or am I relieving it? And I know I'm relieving it, because the stress in our lives comes from like opening a newspaper, turning on CNN, and they're like, white people are why there's rape. And you're like, what? And then you like, your kid comes home from school and is like, today we learned that LGBT is just like everybody else. And when two daddies love each other, and you're like, what? That is the cortisol. The relief is like, these are the motivators. These are the reasons. This is why it's happening. This is how you can figure out what is happening. It's okay to question. It's okay to say what you believe. There's nothing more stressful than to have no idea why anything is happening and how you can survive it. Like this, 23andMe. A major drug company now has access to 23andMe's genetic data. Should you be concerned, right? That is stressful. Being able to say that it's stressful and to then have conversations about it and then think about, you know, what factors in our society and in our civilization are leading to a place of this monumental distrust, like what they could do with our genetic information, that relieves stress. Compare the health and the mental health and the passion. Forget about politics. Just compare the physical output of Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. Who seems more stressed? Like Donald Trump will do like 8 rallies in a row, tweet all night, fucking, you know, meet like end a war, you know, do golf, pay off a hooker from 10 years ago, you know, just mock somebody. And he looks like he's having a blast. Most presidents and presidential candidates, the ones that are constantly living these horrible lies, you know, like these people that know that their entire world is a nonstop deception. They're fainting and weak and gray and old, senile. And you ask yourself, like, okay, so is the fact Donald Trump is willing to address conspiracies, is that making him act sad and old and feeble and unhealthy? The guy is in his 70s. And he's like, let's do another stadium show. It's just phenomenal to me that people, it's like the exact opposite of what people think. So my thing that I'm into now, which is what I'm going to show you, is building the fence, right? So my thing has been, and then I'll read the super chats and then we'll call it. We won't do 3 hours, but this is way longer than I thought I would do, but that's just because it's fun. And when there's over 4,000 people, I can kind of have some sort of guess that there's enough people enjoying it. And I have determined that this is good for people. Because I really thought about it a lot. So just know that, you know, that, and we never went to the moon. They can't even agree on if they can see the stars from the moon. There's this one video early on in the moon deception. And dude, part of me thinks the whole thing was started just because John F. Kennedy did too much meth. Like Kennedy was all cranked on meth, right? So this is the whole story. I know so much shit about NASA now that I never knew. So the way it happened is they completed we're in this Cold War, the space race with Russia, and Russia had someone in space like Yuri, whatever, and everyone's spiraling. It's like we're trying to beat Russia. So we get a guy in space to go from like Florida to California. It's like a 15-minute. It was like 15 total minutes, and travel the distance of Florida to California. Right? Kennedy hears about this. He's definitely cranked on meth. Right? And he just announces immediately, he's like, we will get to the moon. And everyone was like, dude, what? He's like, in this decade, I swear, America fucking sucks if we don't get to the moon. Get to the moon, we'll go anywhere we want. So he said something that there's like every scientist was like, dude, we can't get to the moon. Like no one, turns out no one can get to the moon, but that's a story for another day. And people are like, this one guy sent me this day, he's like, China, hey Big Bear, hey idiot, China went to the moon in 2013 in this unmanned mission. It's like unmanned. Unmanned. People are like, hey, well, okay, I'll do some research, come back. All I'm saying is you bring up some points, but like, just give me more compelling evidence. They can't agree on if you can see stars from space. Dude, Apollo 13, right? Let's just do one more thing about the moon, because I'm fascinated that people believe this nonsense. Kenny's like, the moon, we will get to the moon. And dude, people are like, all right, bring in the Nazis. Let's figure Walt Disney. Let's figure this out. They probably at first tried, but any scientist back then knew that there was no way, but they got so jacked up, but it was just so impossible. It's just like, we will go to the moon. Because back then words mattered. Now like Trump's like, we'll go to Mars tomorrow and I'll have Mexico fucking pay for it. A bunch of fags. And no one cares. I already opened that. Because now words don't matter. Like people don't. Back in the early 60s, people were held accountable to their words. Like being a liar was seen as really bad. It's like being a man of your word was like a big thing. That's why people don't get why that was taken so seriously. It's like when you're like, America will be on the moon. People are like, now we have to. Nowadays, people are like, I'll go to the moon tomorrow. It's like, oh, you said that last week. It's like, that was last week. It was Twitter, bro. It's crushing. And no one cares. It's hilarious. All right, so what the hell was I just talking about? Oh, the another thing. So Apollo 13. You guys have seen that Tom Hanks movie, Apollo 13, right? So there was a Houston, we have a problem. That's what made that famous. So for all you young bucks that just have to understand how insane this whole thing is, right? So one of these flimsy, idiotic contraptions that NASA makes apparently is in deep space, right? Deep space, that's a vacuum. It's just full of just radiation or nothing. It's like, there's something called absolute zero, which is negative 273 degrees Celsius or 0 degrees Kelvin, which is the absence of any molecular or atomic vibration at all. There's zero heat. Okay, so that's deep space. Or it's insanely hot. Or it's like if the sun is shining on you, it's like blazing hot. That's why Mercury goes so hot, so cold, because it doesn't have an atmosphere. So apparently, Apollo 13 has a full meltdown in space, like in space. And they don't have climate control for 3 days, right? Bear in mind, do you understand what they're trying to sell you guys on the materials of it? It was like 1/1000th of an inch thick. You could poke your hole through the side of one of these things, okay? So when they say tinfoil hat, understand that they are projecting on you what they are. They literally claim that they were flying tens of thousands of miles an hour in something that you could poke your finger through. These are quotes from NASA engineers. It's basically tinfoil, right? So there's zero ability of protecting you from heat or cold. Also, if you know anything about vacuums, the lack of pressure on the outside would just explode. The fact that there was air inside and there was a pressurized environment, it would just explode. It would just, like immediately. It's as crazy as saying that we went to the bottom of the ocean protected by newspapers. I'm dead. It's that insane. So for 3 days, they're protected only. So it was either like 400 degrees or negative. Just they're, and the NASA engineers themselves are talking about how like you would either just cook or just like freeze to death. for days. They're in this thing that you could poke through a hole. By the way, there's also something called space junk, where like one screw, like one little, like a penny, is flying so fast. Because, you know, and on Earth, we have something called, well, you have gravity, which is 9.82 meters per second squared. But then there's something called terminal velocity, where you can't go any faster because the friction with the air is as strong as the acceleration of gravity. So that's when you start feeling like you're floating, right? Space doesn't have that. So you'll have like a penny or a screw, and there's millions of these little objects because of all the shit NASA's done in space. They're just everywhere, and it's impossible to map them because like a penny going 20,000 miles an hour would go through 5 feet of lead. Okay, so they're in a thing where you can poke a hole through it with your finger for 3 days. So even if you say that they have the guidance and the science where they can avoid space junk, they don't even have any power, guys. They're using duct tape to get. They survived this and got back to the Earth. This was apparently they're running out of narratives. It's a movie company. NASA's a movie company. So what you have to now believe. International Space Station, 17,000 miles per hour for 20 years, no problem. This shit is ridiculously interesting, and if you don't find it, I'm compelled. Oh, they can't hear it. They physically can't hear it. They can't. And that's why so much of right-wing shit I'm starting to realize is so stupid, because the way a lot of right-wing people react to my moon knowledge, and by the way, these are unarguable points. Okay, if you have a NASA engineer say that you can poke your finger through, because it's all hubris, they're bragging. They're literally bragging. They're bragging about how they survived in the mission and how dangerous it was. They're trying to like jack up the story. If you brag about how you can stick your finger through the very vessel that you're in deep space in for 3 days with no, with system failure, guys, it's like that isn't at all believable at all. Like all the missions, okay, on the moon, you're 1/6 the fucking gravity, right? So, you're like, instead of weighing 180, you're like 60 pounds or whatever. No, the math may be off. I don't care. Just roll with me. And so you should be able to jump insanely high, but none of the footage shows them jumping at all. So then the people that will not address this are like, but their packs, Big Bear, their packs are 100 and something pounds. I'm like, this is when you know that some people will never get out of it. They're just trapped. Those are the people lost in space. Because I'll be like, well, the packs are also 1/6 the gravity. And these people haven't even thought of this, right? They haven't even thought of that. And not only does it not persuade them, their mind just frantically tries to find a way around it. So if someone says, well, their pack is 180 pounds, and you're like, well, now it's like 50 then. So now your total weight with your pack is what you weighed in kindergarten, and you're a really, really strong astronaut. Why has none of them ever jumped more than 18 inches, which is what most people can jump? And they're like, well, there must be a mobility. It's like, dude, you didn't even realize the pack was also 1/6 the gravity. Because gravity, that's the problem. One of the biggest things that I'm noticing is I'm more scientific than scientists. It's like, okay, you haven't applied gravity to mass. All mass. The gravity on Earth in the backpack doesn't stay on Mars. So these people are saying that they're scientists, and they don't realize that gravity affects mass uniformly on the surface of an object. It's like want to know what it's like? And just trust me on this, because I've been on both sides of the coin. The left is crazy. Trump derangement syndrome is insane. You know how you feel when you're like, there's only two genders, or like Trump isn't Adolf Hitler, or like, Ocasio-Cortez is wrong about healthcare. Like Stuff that is so obvious and people will spiral. Like if you're like, listen, a 5-year-old can't be trans and they're like, you are full of hate. Like nothing you can say. The right has those too, guys. And I'm not going to play these games. Like I've been embraced by a lot of the right wing and I'm very happy about that. Thank you. God bless. But I'm not going to play these games, guys.